Kaflina is going to moderate this session, and then she'll hand back to me for
Alright guys, the situation is, can you share with us what's the NFC payments look like? NFC looks like in 2011. Shall we start with Mr. Yoav or Erica? Yoav, okay.
So we looked at part of payment, the other services that we thought would be the killer application of the NFC. And should I address all of them, or? So what we thought is first transportation.
Okay, transportation.
The smart posters and the advertisement. The ability to tap your phone in the poster and receive enhanced multimedia information. The loyalty cards. Basically, I just told the guys that when I pick up my wife's wallet today, it weighs like 5 kilos from loyalty cards. So if they can all be inside the secure element of the phone, it will be easier for her and for me. Location-based services from all kind of aspects. Access control. All of us have a working work card that have the RFID to enter our workplace, almost any one of us. So if we can have it inside the phone, we thought it can be a useful thing. Replacement of keys. If we can have the key to the car, and I was just informed that there is already car manufacturers that use it, and also replace the key to our home with NFC, it can be nice. Also, if compared to today, if we lose the key, if I lose my metal key today, well, I'm lost. I mean, someone can take and go to my house. However, if I have the key in the secure element, I just call the mobile company and they disconnect the secure element and we're okay. And the last thing, we thought about ID and all other formal identification or government identification.
Okay, Mr. Heong?
The whole group has come up with 9 items, fairly similar. Of course, transportation, payments for petrol, ticketing purchases, payments, e-vouchers. This is an interesting one. NFC phone-to-phone transfer, right? access card, cash management for payment retailers, suppliers. Another interesting one, microfinancing disbursement. Now, this is very interesting because all the while we've been hearing payment from the NFC, payment from the phone, payment from the phone. What about using NFC for payment to the phone, right? You get approval from the bank telling you that your financing is approved. You go to the bank counter, tap your phone on some terminal, and the money is in your phone. Right? That's a very interesting one. And of course, lastly is payment at vending machine. Now, most potential in 2011 from these 9 items, we have identified, of course, transportation is number 1. Access cards because it's easy, and of course, payment at vending machine is a very good start. Okay.
Okay, over to Citibank boy. Sorry.
Okay. Now I have to recall, because I didn't do the work of writing down. I have to recall all the conversations. I'll ask my members to help me just in case. I think one of the things we spoke about was quite similar in terms of toll access, parking. We were talking about how, in the example of Singapore, right, one card for everything. I think one of the members was just raising up that you can even go through the immigration gantry, as well as you can use this card and walk up to a 7-Eleven or McDonald's, and essentially it's kind of like a very unified, ubiquitous kind of card, where and the key to that is then that you reduce the cards in your wallet, your bulky wallet. I think that was very important to to the members in the team. The other thing was obviously in terms of making it easy for a normal phone to be transformed into an NFC enabled. Like in the case of, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he manufactures the membrane, which can easily slip on to the phone. We also talked about not so much just in terms of the actual technology or things, but kind of like how would the landscape or the ecosystem need to transform if NFC were really going to be making a big traction? You know, things like, for example, if every phone came with this membrane or is by default NFC enabled, it will encourage a lot more innovation from various parties to jump in, because it becomes like right? You don't have to actually worry about the hardware, for example. The other thing, if, for example, in the case of Singapore, there was a governing body that started to mandate down, well, in a sense, or unify the economy, unify the merchant distribution. So the key was the distribution points. Then a lot of the players that want to roll out NFC can start focusing on changing consumer behavior and awareness. Because right now, there may be too many straws to grasp at, as in, you got to take care of the hardware, you got to take care of the distribution, and at the same time, you got to change your consumer mindset, and you got to come up with something fairly innovative. I mean, all the things that are listed down there and discussed are very innovative, but they need an ecosystem for it to.
All right. Now, I would like to open it to the floor before I ask the panel any questions. Anyone who wants to ask anything? Okay. Now, I would like to ask the three of you, for the Malaysian environment, I'm wearing regulator's hat now. What can we do to spur this here? Because everyone's talking about ecosystem, and I do not want it to be island of services like what we've seen so far. So, besides funding, let's not talk about money now, but what can we do? If you can share that with me or with us here.
I think earlier in my presentation, I mentioned about regulatory guidelines from the regulators, right? This guy, I think Roy earlier also mentioned, right? The telco wants to whack all the 100% of revenue, and so does the bank, right? In that sense, there is no agreement between the two main industries. This kind of thing, I think as a regulator should come in, tell them, okay, you boys play nice and do it this way or that way, right? Then we can get the ball moving in terms of innovation on the actual details of developing that ecosystem, rather than two boys bickering who wants the toy most.
See, actually, in terms of kind of like an analogy or an example, if you look at how, this is not mobile, but let's say gyro transaction, for example, or FTX transaction, which is MAPS. This is where you can do money transfer, ATM withdrawals. There are some set, what I call pieces, right, of percentage of revenue that goes to the bank that initiates and the bank that receives. So, it's kind of like in a very structured manner. There's less negotiation because it's a package deal, right? So you get money, and the amazing thing is that you can get all these banks who are technically competitors sharing and working together in the same network. So in that same sense, if something similar were to come about, something similar, then it's definitely doable.
So basically it's with MAPS, the revenue sharing that you're talking about right now with the gyro transaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just sharing an example of where so-called maybe
people you would not normally think as collaborating, competitor banks, right, can even collaborate together once there's a structured system together. Now, I'm not saying it must be MAPS, but I'm saying that there's already an example of how these things, once structured, can get two parties to work together.
It seems like that collaboration is the world. However, kind of forced collaboration, which means until the regulator should say, okay, in this date, a year from now, I would like the nation to be ready. I want at least 1 or 2 banks. I want at least 1 or 2 mobile operators. I want at least transportation. I want at least this service provider, and I want someone who lead the group. And all of this. And it kind of forced everyone to collaborate, however, because otherwise no one can submit this proposal alone. They must collaborate in order to propose decent proposal that you as a regulator will grant the permission to create this ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Now, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Hussein. We try not to mediate if we can.